أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, my dear brothers and sisters. May Allah bless you all and accept all of your a'mal, all of your fast, all of your salat bihaqq Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Yesterday, my brothers and sisters, we spoke about the idea of worship and why a person must worship, why a person must act on what they believe. And we said that the connection between belief and worship is drawn by many different proofs in many different ways. You can draw that connection. One of them being what worship symbolizes, another one being of what worship brings about, or the effects of worship, when we said that every action, it symbolizes something and it brings about something in the outside world. We said when you analyze what worship symbolizes, we said it symbolizes thanks for God that has given you everything, and it being your moral obligation to thank the giver, the one that was gracious with you and beneficent. Similarly, we said that worship brings about something, just the same as any other action. It brings about something in the outside world. It manifests something in the outside world. What does it manifest? Well, we said because you are connecting yourself to the ultimate source of good and evil, or benefit and harm rather. By you worshiping this being, by you humbling yourself to this being, connecting yourself with this being, you are ultimately benefiting yourself and pushing away what is harmful to yourself. And we said, adding on to this, that when a human being analyzes themselves, they will see that they are comprised of a spiritual reality and a physical reality. And worship, one of the benefits of worship, is that it nourishes the spiritual side of the human being, just as food nourishes the physical body of the human being. And we delved into it much more than just this. I advise you to go back and to watch the video if you haven't, because as we said, all of the different topics are connected. Jamil. Today, my brothers and sisters, we are going to ask another question, adding on to what we spoke about. And the question is as follows. What is the difference between worshiping and praying? When I go downstairs to the masjid, when you go to your room and you pray, you say Allahu Akbar. Like you are worshiping. But what's the difference, or what's the connection rather, between worship and prayer? As in, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command me and you to pray to Him? Why is prayer asked of us? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, Aqimus salat, uphold prayer? And what's the connection between prayer and worship? And from a practical perspective, I can ask the question in a different way. I'm worshiping. I want to worship. But am I praying? What is asked of me? Worship or prayer? Taban prayer. Aqimus salat. Jameel. I am praying. Or worshiping. I'm trying to worship. But am I actually praying? Two very different things. I'm worshiping God when I stand up on my prayer mat. But am I actually praying? Two very different things. Connected but different. To understand the question more, we have to ask an introductory question. What's the difference between the two? When you go to the ulama, they come and they tell you, my brothers and sisters, worship is defined as what we defined it yesterday, an act of humility with belief that whoever you're humiliating yourself to, respecting, humbling yourself to, holds benefit and harm. That's what worship means. Prayer is the specific act that we do, comprised of the conditions that it's comprised of, with certain actions done in a certain way, under certain circumstance, in a certain time period. In other words, it is the specific salat that you do that has all of the conditions, that meets all of the requirements, and is done in the most correct way, or done in the way that was prescribed on you to do, in the time that it was prescribed on you to do it in. That's what prayer is, and that's what worship is. Like their connection with each other, what is it? The ulama, they come and say, between worship and prayer, there is what we call umum wa khusus mutlaq. What's umum wa khusus mutlaq? Probably a term that you've never heard before. Umum wa khusus mutlaq in logic and mantiq means one is a title for the other. One encompasses the other, while the other does not necessarily have to encompass every single thing that the top one encompasses. I'll give you an example. Or I'll try to apply what the idea means here, what the concept means here. Every single type of prayer, salat, is worship. But not every single type of worship is prayer. The circle of worship will always encompass every single type of salat, of prayer. Every type of worship, the circle of worship, will encompass every single type of prayer. But every single type of prayer, falls under worship. But not every worship is prayer itself. There are certain types of worships that are not prayer. Like, for example, giving a sacrifice, like some religions do. Or paying a charity, that's not prayer, but it's a worship. The circle of worship always encompass prayer. But there are types of worship that are not prayer. This is what we call umum wa khusus mutlaq. In other words, you can be worshipping Allah Ta'ala but not praying. I'm going to say this one more time. You can worship God but not be praying. They're two very different things. A person can stand in front of Allah and try to pray, but that prayer is wrong. It's not actually prayer. They're worshiping, but they're not praying. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran commands us to pray, not just to worship. Not to show thanks in a way that I deem to be correct. Rather, to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the next question is, if God deserves worship from me, am I to worship God in the way I see fit? And am I to worship God in the way I see fit or in the way He sees fit? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me everything that I have, and so the moral obligation is to thank Him. Now, does this same moral obligation push me in a direction and says to me, you must worship Him in a specific manner? Or your worship to Him must just constitute as thanks, nothing more, nothing less? This question, my brothers and sisters, although to you may seem obvious, this question, my brothers and sisters, is also a question that many religions have fought over. Many philosophical ideas and ideologies and paths have differed on. Because let's think about it. The moral obligation that I have towards this being is what? To thank Him. I can thank Him in the way I see fit. Why do I have to thank Him in a specific way? Especially if that way is so stringent. Especially if that way is so rigid. And we hear this all the time from our youth. It was such a simple mistake. Or I feel deep down inside I can thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a different way. I don't have to pray. Hear that all the time. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the incomplete idea. It's coming from a moral obligation that pushed me in one direction but did not steer me to the end goal. It's coming from the idea in my mind, the thought in my mind, the moral compass that I have telling me to thank Allah, thank God. But it's not completely pushing me towards one method of thanking Him. And it's not giving me It's not showing me, the value of that method. That's where the problem sprouts from. That moral compass is steering you in the right direction, but it's not taking you to the right place. Not taking me to the right place, rather. Yes? So the question is, why do I have to pray in this way? Why can't I just thank God in the way I see fit? And use this when your children, when people of the community ask. This is the answer. Use this example. Perfect example. Listen. Let's say we had a very pious scholar. And things like this have happened in history. Let's say we had a very pious scholar living in a city that is mixed. Mixed. Muslims and non-Muslims. And this has happened in history where pious scholars lived in such cities and were the leaders of such cities. Yes, it's happened. This very pious scholar was the leader. When this pious scholar heard of an imminent threat coming towards the city, he called upon the tribes of the tribes outside the city and told them to take their defensive positions and defend the city. He made other decisions to protect all of the inhabitants of that city, Muslim and non-Muslim alike. Jamil. After the battle was won and the city was protected by the inhabitants of the city and the army that was called on by that scholar, what happened? The scholar is in his home, and crowds of people come to the scholar's home, chanting in his name, bringing with them gifts. He welcomes them in. Each person comes to the scholar, thanks him, and presents a gift. The first man presents the scholar with a bottle of wine. The second man presents the scholar with a pig. And the third person presents the scholar with pork, a meal. A meal he made at home, pork. Presents it to the scholar. Question. These gifts that are being presented to a very pious Muslim scholar, are they considered gifts or will they be seen as insults? To a Muslim, bringing him wine or bringing her pig or pork, that's in one way or another insult. So what am I going to do with this? Yes, it's a gesture of thanks and gratitude. But isn't that person to blame? Wouldn't you have the right to pull that person aside and say, hey, listen, you should have thought this through a little bit more. You should have gotten to know this scholar and what he believes in, to know what's an adequate gift to this scholar. Sure, you showed your gratitude. But in showing gratitude, you mistakenly insulted this person. In showing gratitude, you accidentally insulted this person by giving them a bottle of wine, which he considers to be dirt, which he considers to be najas, which he considers to be vile. Considers it to be vile. You consider it to be good. To him, to this scholar, wine and garbage is the same. The same way that if I came to your home, I wouldn't present you with garbage. You'd consider it to be an insult. That bottle of wine to that scholar was at the very same level as garbage. And so it's an insult. What was the obligation on the villagers? The obligation was for them to know what is an adequate present and gift for that scholar. For them to get to know the scholar, just for them to be able to provide them with an adequate gift. In the very same way, a human being needs to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And needs to present God with what is adequate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I can try and find that on my own, but I'm not going to get anywhere. Why? Because God is so beyond me. God is so beyond me, someone that I cannot understand. Or a being that I cannot understand. Obviously not a someone. A being that I cannot understand. I can't comprehend. I don't know what he considers to be good. What he considers to be wrong. I know the fundamentals. but I don't know deep down inside if this is something acceptable to God or not. So me showing God gratitude by any action is not enough. Not enough. طيب, who is to tell me? Who is to tell me and to inform me how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to be thanked? None other than Himself. He Himself. None other than Him. And that's a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Himself, He tells us, okay, I want you to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. And subhanallah al-azim wa bihamdih. Here's a spiritual understanding, a spiritual side to a spiritual aspect. Subhanallah. That even this gift of thanks that we show to God, God made it in us in a way where it's ultimately what's best for me and you. As in, God is telling us, thank me for what I have given you. But if you look at it from a different perspective, He's not telling me and you to thank Him because He's gaining anything. Because He's going to take something from it. Because it makes Him feel good about Himself. No. He's making it a moral obligation on me and you to pray. Because it's ultimately beneficial for me and you. In other words, He's making what's beneficial for me and you a moral obligation on ourselves. Think about that. Look at the mercy of God. Allah Ta'ala shows mercy in different ways. Look at the mercy. He knows that prayer is ultimately what is best for me and you. Me and you are not logical. I'm not a logical person. We're not logical. We're not inclined by logic. We don't think with our mind. We think with our heart. We think with our desires. We're instinctual. So God said, okay, I'm going to tap into your instinct. I'm going to tap into your desires. I'm going to tap into your moral compass, which affects both your intellect and your heart. And your heart. I'm going to make you feel guilty for not doing what is ultimately beneficial for you. Like the mother. When she sees her daughter do something good. When she sees her daughter come and try to thank her. She tells her, you know how you can thank me in the best possible way? Go do your homework. Doing her homework, is it going to make the mother feel good? If a mother tells her daughter, do you want me to feel happy with you? Do you want to thank me? Yes, go do your homework. Go do your homework. Go learn. Is that benefit for the mother? What's the mother going to get from her doing her homework? Is she going to get an A+ or a check mark? No. It's ultimately what's beneficial for the child. In the very same way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acts with me and you. The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The mercy of God. The mercy of God. The gift must be adequate, my brothers and sisters. The gift must correspond. Must correspond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what is best. What is best for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's status. What's best for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the position that He occupies. And so, it's very clear now that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts these rules on us and tells us abide by these rules, pray to me in this method, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Don't do 1, 2, 3, and 4. I need you to do wudu in this manner. I need you to do tahara in this specific way. I need you to first raise your hands. Then I want you to put them to your sides. Then I want you to bow. Then I want you to prostrate, etc., etc., etc. It's because this method, my brothers and sisters, is what's ultimately beneficial for me and you. And the best example I try to give, and this is a good example to give also for the youth, when they ask, why is there so much rules in our ibadah? Oh, I did one extra rak'ah because I forgot. Why do I have to repray my salat? Oh, I didn't do ghusl in the right way or on the right time. So why do I have to go do my salat again? I didn't do my wudu correctly. Why do I have to make my salat? Very simply, say it like this. Your salat is the key to heaven. Your salat is a key to heaven. Your worship is a key to heaven. For every lock, there's one specific key. Many keys look the same. Compare the shape of this key with the shape of this key. They have the general shape of a key. But this key that opens up the hawza will not open the door to my house. Although they look very similar. Maybe there's one notch on one key that is not on another key. But that one notch will be the difference of me getting into the hawza or me sleeping outside of my house. If I use the hawza's key to try and open the door in my house, I'm not going to get in my house and I'm going to sleep outside. If I use my house key to try and open the door of the hawza, I'm not going to get in. I'm not going to be able to do my studies. Simple. Although the shape of the key is very simple, or very similar. The shape of the two keys is very, very similar. There's one minor difference, and that minor difference is the difference between getting into your house and sleeping outside. Minor difference. Just the same way that a minor difference in the way that you do wudu now versus doing wudu correctly, me doing wudu incorrectly now and me doing wudu correctly, is the difference between my salat being valid or invalid. Yes. And is the difference between me being able to open that door to Jannah and not. Just like the key. Your worship is the key to Jannah. Make sure the key fits the lock. Make sure your salat is not merely worship. It's actually salat. It's actually prayer. Jameel. So then what's the most common mistakes that people do? Many mistakes. What are the most common mistakes people do shaping their key? People make shaping that key. Many. But some of the most common mistakes don't come in the worship itself. Many of us know how to do salat. Most of these mistakes happen before salat. In wudu. In ghusl. In what we do to prepare ourselves for salat. In what we do to prepare ourselves for salat. Those are where the most common mistakes happen. Like, what are they? What are they? Very simple. Very simple. The first common mistake is, for example, not actually washing the parts that you need to wash and not wiping the parts that you need to wipe. What do I mean by that? We all know you wash your face and you wash your hands and you wipe your feet. That's it. It's not wipe your head and feet and that's it. It's not a big deal. But there are some people that in washing their face, they're not actually washing their face, they're wiping their face. They get the water in their hands and then the water falls and then they just go like this. It's like, you're not washing, you're wiping. Common mistake. I see even Hawza students doing it. Yes, even Hawza students. We see them doing it. They get the water, they wet their hands, but then they throw the water away or let the water fall and they just go like this. Like, that's not washing, my brothers and sisters. That's wiping. That's the act of wiping. Like, that's the one. Another one is washing the left arm twice. Sayyid Sistani does have some leeway with this. Other ulama don't. Other ulama like Sayyid al-Khou'i, for example, don't. Unless Sayyid al-Khou'i before he passed away changed his fatwa. No, you don't. You can't wash your left arm twice. You can wash your right arm twice. You can wash your face twice. But left arm, no. You can't wash it twice. And on this, I'll tell you a story. Once I walked into the washroom in the Mu'assasa here at the Hawza when I was young, just starting. And I saw this man. He was probably a 40-year-old man. He was doing his wudu in the wash. And this man was not just washing his arms, not just washing his arms, not just washing his face. He was washing the walls as well. He was washing everything. So he was not washing his arms only. He was washing the ceiling. He was washing the walls. He was washing the mirrors. I looked at him, and I was young. And I said, you're washing your left arm twice? What's happening? He's like, yeah, this is how I do. Just throwing water. And I more or less just like was confused. And I said to myself, wow, this person is not only washing his left arm twice, he probably washed his face, his entire head was wet. Washed his face 3 or 4 different times over, which makes your wudu batil on like pretty much every marja. I haven't seen a fatwa that says it's still valid. And even if he wanted to wipe his head, his head was wet. I'm just looking at this guy, and it's like, dude, you're 40 years old. Obviously, I didn't tell him that I was scared of the guy. Just between myself, I said, you're 40 years old. You have a family and kids, and you're teaching your children how to do wudu. And you've been doing wudu your whole life like this, and your wudu is wrong. Now, I'm not going to sit and tell this guy that your wudu is wrong. I just let him go. Maybe at that time I should have told him something, should have brought it up in some way. But this person has to do their wudu again. And by the way, wudu is what we call shart waqi'i. It's a real condition. It's a condition that is not based on your knowledge or ignorance. It's not based on whether whether you meant to do it or did not mean to do it. No, if it's wrong, it's wrong. That's it. And then the salat is ultimately wrong just the same. Okay? So make sure you're doing your wudu correctly. Wash your right arm twice and your left arm once, and wash your face a maximum of 2 times, and that's it. In terms of washing. In terms of wiping, many people get new water to wipe with. They put their hand under the sink again and then they wipe their heads. Or furthermore, they may not do it like that, but many people, even a lot of mu'mineen, and strict mu'mineen, they make this mistake. What is it? They close the tap with the hand that they're going to be wiping with. And on the tap there's water. That's new water. You're introducing foreign water into the wudu, which is wrong, which makes your wudu incorrect. If you introduce foreign water onto your hand, you cannot use that hand or those same fingers that have the new water on your hand. You can't wipe your hands, your head and feet with that hand. You have to wipe with a place that doesn't have the new water on it. So essentially, if I close the tap with my 2 fingers, I can't use these 2 fingers to wipe with. I have to use the palm of my hand and the other fingers to wipe with. Pay attention to these things, my brothers and sisters. Little things. But these little things, just like the key, are that notch that's in the wrong place. These little things are the mistakes in your key. And ultimately, they will invalidate your fast. Invalidate your salat. Sorry, I'm fasting. Invalidate your salat. Jameel. These are the things that people do wrong in wudu. The things that are most commonly done wrong, done incorrectly in salat. There's a lot. But the most common things that make your salat batil all the time are in the arkan. Are in the conditions of the salat, number 1, which we discussed. And also in the actions in the salat that are considered pillars. Pillars of the salat. They are takbiratul ihram, saying Allahu Akbar. Standing before ruku'. Ruku' itself. 2 sujood. Right? And niyyah, the intention. These things are the pillar of salat. Making a mistake in one of these, adding one, subtracting one, breaks your salat in every circumstance, except in certain times takbirat al-ihram. Adding takbirat al-ihram may not break your salat according to Sayyid Sistani under certain circumstances. But all of the other ones, adding, subtracting, making some mistakes within them, will break your salat. And most commonly is takbirat al-ihram being said incorrectly. Saying Allahu Akbar incorrectly. It's not the actions, it's the words. Takbiratul ihram is not the action of raising your hand. Rather, it is the words themselves. They are the words themselves that are used. Saying them incorrectly, my brothers and sisters. Saying those 2 words, Allahu Akbar, invalidates the salat. And it invalidates it for so many people, even Arabs. By the way, Arabs are not, it's not like they're not culprits. No, they are. Even those that have the native tongue, they make a mistake. Make sure you're saying takbiratul ihram correctly. Make sure you're pronouncing the words correctly. Make sure you're reciting Surah Al-Fatiha correctly. This is also another common mistake. Although qira'ah is not from the arkan, it is obligatory on you, mandatory on you and me, my brothers and sisters, to learn how to pronounce the words of Surah Al-Fatiha correctly. Another one, moving while doing ruku' and sujood. Moving while doing ruku' and sujood. If it's done purposefully, could invalidate the salat. Especially if you're lifting your arms or your feet off the ground. Yes, in sujood and in ruku', if you're lifting your feet off the ground. By doing such a thing, you've invalidated the action itself. You could potentially invalidate the action itself. And then lastly, obviously, is praying too fast. This is a common problem. Because when you pray too fast, you're not still when you need to be still. You're not stopping when you need to stop. You're doing one of these. Right? They call it كَنَقْرِ الْغُرَابِ. Like the way that a crow pecks at the ground. That's how you see some people praying. Peck. It's just pecking. They're done. No. Pray slow so that you can ensure that your actions are correct and you can ensure that you're thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way He wants you to thank Him. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. أسأله تعالى أن يعفو عنا ويغفر لنا ويرحمنا إنه نعم المولى ونعم النصير وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.